Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed viewers of Boss Economics World, welcome back to another hard-hitting analysis of economic calamities brought to you by none other than your government's finest decision-makers. Today, we're diving headfirst into the latest brilliant maneuvers from the man often called a deal-maker extraordinaire, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Following his tried-and-true approach, has decided to impose a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports from every country, including our dear neighbors Canada and Mexico. Yes, you heard it right, whether it's Canadian aluminum, Chinese steel, or even that thin sheet from South Korea that holds your roof together, if it's metal, it's gonna get hit by Trump's new tariff hammer. So buckle up, folks, because we're diving into what could be a major economic storm solely powered by good old government intervention. Let's start with a quick recap. President Trump began his trade war in earnest years ago, kicking off with tariffs on China in 2018 and escalating his battle with other key global partners. Fast forward to today. He's doubling down on his repertoire of tariffs, hitting steel at 25% and aluminum at 10% nationwide. And this isn't just a shot across China's bow, it's a global cannon blast aimed directly at all countries sending metal to U.S. shores. But why this sudden love for tariffs? The narrative here is that Trump wants to protect American jobs, reduce trade deficits, and revitalize domestic industries by restricting cheap foreign imports from undercutting U.S. producers. This isn't exactly a new technique. Economists have seen versions of this movie before, and let's just say, the ending usually isn't as rosy as expected. We're talking about protectionism in full swing, favor the domestic over the foreign by making foreign imports more expensive with tariffs, thus incentivizing consumption of domestic goods. On paper, it sounds almost patriotic, buy local steel, boost U.S. jobs. But hey, before we all rush the gates waving flags of excitement, let's ask some basic questions. What tends to happen when you isolate yourself from the global market in a world that relies on global supply chains and specialization? The answer, my dear viewers, is higher prices for producers, higher prices for consumers, and generally, economic disruption all around. Let's break down what this means. You see, most of the U.S. demand for steel and aluminum gets fulfilled by imports. Why? Because no matter how much rhetoric you sprinkle on top, some grades of metal just aren't efficiently produced domestically. This applies especially when you look at certain specialty steels used by energy sectors, construction behemoths like Caterpillar, or even wind turbine makers. Tariffing imported steel and aluminum increases their price, which raises costs for downstream industries. Higher cost of inputs for manufacturing means some combination of 1. Higher prices for final products, think of anything from cars to canned beverages. 2. Tighter profit margins for manufacturers, who must either absorb costs or pass them on. 3. Companies becoming less competitive in a globalized world market as they're paying more for the same materials than foreign competitors. The fun part of this trickle-down is that it lands right in the laps of consumers. Yeah, congratulations folks, your new American-made steel bridge will now come at a premium. Want to buy a new car made from American parts? Take a guess who will ultimately eat the difference caused by price hikes at the Sour Patch price shock aisle of your auto dealership. Spoiler, it's you. According to numerous economic estimates, including a well-cited report from economists at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, tariffs of this scale could raise metal costs by over 7% and add millions of dollars to production processes across various industries, ranging from crude oil drilling services to mobile phone production. Let's not forget how tariffs can actually do damage to the very local industries they're supposed to support. President Trump championed steel tariffs as a way to protect U.S. steelmakers from foreign competition. But here's where his logic sort of goes off a cliff. With demand more or less fixed, forcing buyers to choose more expensive U.S. steel doesn't necessarily lead to expansion, it can lead to losses in key sectors that desperately need access to competitively priced inputs. Tools that aren't made in the USA yet are still critical for multiple, interconnected industries. Case in point, according to the American Farm Bureau, retaliatory tariffs from other countries on U.S. exported goods in previous tariff wars, particularly those in agriculture, plunged farmer incomes to 40-year lows. If you overlay this with today's renewed skirmishes, you get a feedback loop of regulatory chess-playing where the pawns, ordinary companies and working citizens with less political leverage, end up paying sky-high tit-for-tat retaliatory costs. Here's another piece of bad news for the books. This latest wave of tariffs comes as inflation is already challenging many industries and destabilizing markets. The everyday shopper already dealing with rising food, gas, and rent costs won't appreciate the sticky prices they soon will find attached to imported consumer goods. If American manufacturing decides it will weather the tariffs without price hiking, unlikely, they're still operating in an environment where labor shortages and unprecedented commodity hikes are crippling profit margins. Now let's think about the international response. While Trump may believe slapping tariffs all around like a whack-a-mole champion is good negotiating strategy, retaliation is where things usually go south. During his tenure, countries including China, Canada, and the EU responded to Trump tariffs with countermeasures in kind. Take Beijing, for example. Contrary to popular belief, China didn't exactly stand still during the initial years of Trump's tariffs. It reciprocated by targeting $14 billion worth of U.S. goods. Fast forward to today, where global markets are already on edge due to cooling relations between Washington and Beijing. The current international climate is even more fraught with friction, from the drawn-out stalemate over semiconductors and intellectual property theft to sanctions related to geopolitical concerns. With markets in China and significant trading partners like the European Union fraying at the edges of cooperation, I dare say, we're staring down the barrel of a larger economic conflict if these exchange tariffs balloon. Capital Economics, a well-known economic research firm, projected that the effects of these trade tiffs, were they to spiral, could stunt global GDP growth by as much as 1.5 percentage points over the next few years. A global recession anchored by trade tensions is far from improbable. Now, of course, the current Phase 1 deal between the US and Beijing, which was already under renegotiation, will easily become a bargaining chip in any widening spat. As for US imports from Canada and Mexico, we may find ourselves in a tricky position. While both countries initially dodged the first tariff bullet back in Trump's first stint in office, the deal this time around looks as though everyone's in the crosshairs. At the root of all of this is the fundamental misalignment between economic optics and economic substance. While tariffs may appear to be a tough, nationalist policy designed to uplift domestic industries and realign trade deficits, they're ultimately reactionary tools that disproportionately harm the very sectors they claim to protect. The US's path forward is not to entrench itself in a protectionist spiral but to deepen technological investment, infrastructure, and alliances. Yet here we are, a bluster of bravado that leaves little serious thought as to the long-term consequences. This is, yet again, a typical populist rally play when market realities no longer align comfortably with political ambition. The irony of this all doesn't escape discerning eyes. On one hand, Trump postures tariffs as a Hail Mary solution for steel jobs, a blast from the past fantasy of Rust Belt redemption. But actual employment in American steel production has plummeted over time due to automation and the moving away from dirty coal-clogged industries. While steel production capacity remains vital in specific strategic segments, like infrastructure and defense, we face the sobering reality that the modern economy spins more on technological advancement over blunt force industry quotas. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the steel industry employs a fraction of today's workforce compared to yesteryear, so what is the full-spectrum result of defending a shrinking niche? Ultimately, policies like these not only fail to secure meaningful economic rejuvenation but also miss out on future-focused economic policies. At Boss Economics World, the story we see is one of misguided protectionism, global retaliation, and a deepening disillusionment with quick-fix economic tricks. Whether you're in finance, manufacturing, energy, or even an informed tax-paying American citizen, the pain of increased costs spreads through every sector of our increasingly globalized world. To wrap it neatly, whether Trump's tariffs stick or not, the unintended consequences are guaranteed: supply chain shocks, retaliation, and heightened market volatility await us all. The world market is interconnected, folks, like it or not. And with that, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon for more hot takes, updates, and, as ever always folks, we'll see you next time, where we'll be focusing on how these tariffs have sparked tensions in global energy markets. Until then, remember, the true cost of misguided protectionism is more than a few brown spots on the economic apple, it's taking us straight to the rot underneath.